Hi, is Dustin there?
This is Dustin.
Dustin, it's Gunnar Nelson. How are you?
Hey, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. Sorry it's been kind of difficult getting through you. I apologize. I was disconnected at the switchboard a few times.
Oh, yeah, there's a volunteer up front, I think, is having trouble with the phone. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. She's very nice. I'm sorry that I was tardy for you.
No problem. Well,
That's cool. Hey, you want to talk about some rock and roll?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's hear about the new Nelson album, Peace Out. What can we expect from that?
Well, it's actually kind of the exclamation point on this phase of our career. We're actually going through a musical change right now. What we wanted to do is pull out all the stops and make really the quintessential Nelson arena rock record, and that's what we did with Peace Out. We had a lot of fun making it, and I spent about a year and a half putting it together, and it's something I can be really, really proud of. It's everything that made Nelson what it was. It was kind of a unique thing. It wasn't a blues-oriented band like a lot of the other bands that came out back in the day. It was really driven by Southern California melody and folk rock and stuff. I mean, we grew up around the Eagles and all that kind of stuff, but with a good healthy dose of Bad Company and Foreigner and Queen and all that. So, I mean, that's basically what you get, as far as I'm concerned, is something that is unapologetically what we're all about, and pretty much the best we can do at this point in our career.
Yeah, sounds awesome for sure. And, of course, showbiz has been in your family forever, considering who your grandfather and your father was. So it sounds like now in your career, as you mentioned, unapologetic. Were you guys like that in the beginning, or did you kind of feel pressured that you needed to go out and succeed right away?
Well, I got to be honest with you. I think it's really kind of been a Nelson family karma, is that, being made to feel guilty until proven innocent. I mean, our father, for example, he sold 280 million singles in his career.
Yeah.
Over 90 million albums. And I think it really took, after his passing, for a lot of the critics to really realize what kind of a contribution Rick Nelson actually made to the rock and roll landscape. I mean, this is a guy that was personally responsible for smuggling rock and roll into mainstream American living rooms at a critical time in its history. And that was just the first phase of his career. And then he became well known for his second phase of his career. He's now credited with founding the first true country rock band with his Stone Canyon Band, according to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But, that didn't really come to light until after he was gone because, look, the guy was just freakishly attractive. And he also was considered, to be, he wasn't a rags to riches story. Obviously, he grew up on the Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet. So, I suppose there were a lot of critics that felt like it was less of a rock and roll story because he wasn't underprivileged when he grew up. So, he was a guy that, very quietly made unbelievable records and had amazing players. I mean, starting with James Burton and all of a sudden later on the second phase, Tom Brumley on pedal steel. But, it took 20 years for the Bob Dylans of the world to come forward, who were, good friends of my dad, and say, I really started playing because of watching Ricky Nelson on television and listening to his tunes. And people like Brian May, and, he's quoted as being a huge Ricky Nelson fan of those early records. Jimmy Page, same thing, started playing because of those early records. And those guys obviously all went on to make, records and music with their bands that I love. So the cycle continued. But, I do remember when I was a kid and my dad was out there touring up to 300 nights a year. I think there were a lot of other people that got more credibility, so to speak, a lot easier, because for people to admit that Ricky Nelson actually had the talent he had was like having to admit that the prom queen actually had a brain. And I think that was different. That was different, for our dad. It was different for Oz. And, obviously the visuals that Matthew and I came out with Nelson, it was easy to poke fun at. And when you look at it, but our whole job, that first record, was to get noticed. Our whole thing was love us or hate us, you're going to know who we are. And mission accomplished. But, that first career was really truncated unfairly by the rise of grunge and the single largest paradigm shift in music industry history. And, our entire career, we basically, been having to overemphasize the songwriting and to really get out there and really convert people. And it's actually something that we love doing. And I think that this latest record, that Peace Out, really goes a long way to doing that. 25 years later after our debut, I believe we're stronger writers, and I know the musicianship, and I should hope after 25 years the musicianship has improved. But I think it's really evident in the grooves on this record.
Yeah, and you mentioned, I mean, obviously when After the Rain came out, you guys were, megastars kind of seemingly overnight. And you mentioned the grunge coming in, kind of wiping out everything. So this album, you mentioned the ultimate arena rock album. Was this the one you probably would have written next had the grunge not wiped it out?
This is actually the follow-up to the follow-up. We about 4 years ago, we made a record called Lightning Strikes Twice that we're also very proud of. And the task that we were assigned by the label at the time was to imagine that it was back in the day and that we were given all the time and support from the label and from the industry to actually make a follow-up to the After the Rain record. And so that's really where Lightning Strikes Twice was coming from. This one, having really said that, this one is really kind of a continuation of that. It's really gotten to the point now, our industry is really challenging right now because of streaming and downloading and, short attention spans and all that. Making the kind of records that Nelson is known for making has become increasingly difficult. I mean, back in the day, we had $500,000 budgets from Geffen Records to do that. And now the labels are expecting that kind of quality much faster for free. And it's just gotten to the point where, we have to make sure that the quality level stays high enough to where we can be proud of it because the music is forever. I mean, my dad's music is a testament to that. I go out there and I listen to Traveling Man or Hello, Mary Lou, and I hear how well it was recorded and how good it sounds to this day. And that's what I really aspire to. I aspire to make music that I can really be proud of, that I can show my sons one day or my grandkids and say, hey, I'm really proud of that work. And really enjoy them making fun of the fact that, Grandpa used to have long hair and wear spandex.
Well, yeah, obviously that worked, though, at the time. I mean, what are your memories of that first album? I mean, because you guys really seem to be all over the place, MTV and the radio, and, everywhere you looked, you saw you guys.
Well, what was really great is that MTV at the time was the world's biggest radio station. I mean, everybody watched MTV. It was coming out of that phase where their whole moniker, I mean, they weren't a game show network and they weren't showing Snooki. I mean, they really did play videos.
Sure.
And their moniker was, as you remember, all music, only music, 24 hours a day, and it really sucked us all in, And it was great because it was such a visual medium. We made sure that our videos were eye-catching, that the image was really one that would stop you when you're flipping through the channels, and at least want to investigate who those guys were. And mission accomplished. That was cool. Blessing and a curse of that, the image was so strong with the two guys with the long blonde hair that it got to the point where, I felt that that was starting to overshadow the fact that we wrote all of our own tunes and we produced our own records, and we've been playing since we were 6 and professionally in the LA club scene since we were 12, and it was just kind of one of those things. So as far as the fan was concerned, it was absolutely an overnight success. The reality is absolutely as far away from that as possible. I mean, we were playing those clubs with the skinny tie bands, on stage next to us from the time we were 12 years old, and doing four gigs a week, and really trying to get that elusive record deal. And the way we were marketed, it kind of looked like it was unfortunately something that the record company fabricated as something that was strictly commerce, and that really wasn't true. We tried to cover all of our bases and just make some great records. And I'm really proud of that first record and the splash that we made. And fortunately, we released that record right at the end of the whole Confidence Rock era. As you mentioned, the paradigm did shift. Man, it was violent and abrupt, just like the death of disco was in the 70s.
Sure.
It just changed overnight. We were on tour and we were doing 14 months straight out on the road, and we came back and the entire world was wearing flannel. And if you weren't from Seattle and drug addicted, to be honest with you, you weren't getting any airplay. You weren't getting any video play. I mean, the entire agenda changed. But, I can understand because the whole Confidence Rock era got bloated just like the whole disco thing did. I mean, Donna Summer, at the end of her career there, was commanding $1 million a record, and that's in those dollars back then. And, some enterprising record company guy got together with the other record companies and said, hey, there's this new thing called punk over in England, and if you give those guys a Happy Meal and a fifth of Jack Daniels, they'll play for you. and so everything shifted, and I think really the same thing kind of happened with the whole grunge thing. Looking back on it, I really do think it was engineered. I don't think it was organic. I think it became more organic, but I'm sure that you recall that. I mean, it seemed like overnight MTV was not playing anything that wasn't grunge, and the fashions. I mean, the Gap, everything changed, and there was a lot of great music that came out of that era, but frankly, I really missed guitar solos for like 8 years. And I felt a little disenfranchised because, I didn't do stream of consciousness songwriting. I was raised in a house full of songwriters where lyrics meant something and stories that the songwriters told meant something. So I really kind of felt like a man without a country for a full 8 years there. And, fortunately, here we are all these years later. And I think a lot of people have rediscovered the great music that not only was made in the 80s and 90s, but since then by people who, had something to say and, it helped emphasize their point with a guitar plugged into a Marshall.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I wanted to ask you about, kind of an odd question, but when I was looking up some stuff from you, I didn't realize this is probably one of my favorite songs, but were you behind the Two Heads Are Better Than One for the Bill and Ted soundtrack?
Oh, yeah, we were. Actually, it was a title track for the first Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure movie, and we actually had to do it under a moniker because our A&R guy, the legendary John Kolodner at Geffen, would not allow us to release that song as Nelson prior to the release of the After the Rain record that we've been working on with him for 2 years.
Okay.
So it was Matthew and Gunnar Nelson and Dweezil Zappa. We did it as a three-piece, and we just came up with a name on the spot, and it was called Power Tool.
Right.
And so, that song, Two Heads Are Better Than One, that is actually really kind of like the first Nelson single.
Yeah, it's incredible what you'll find out. I love that song for years, and I had no idea that you guys were behind that.
Oh, thanks. Well, that was actually the first time I ever heard the band Extreme play. They had a song called Play With Me on that soundtrack, and, holy crap, man, I heard this guitar playing that was absolutely staggering, and that was the first time I heard Nuno Bettencourt play.
Yeah, I guess it goes to show you never know which project you put out there is going to catch somebody's ear.
You never really know. It's a very cool soundtrack, and it was funny when they first approached us to do a song for it. It gave you a brief synopsis of what the storyline was, and as you can imagine how goofy that little one-paragraph description of what the movie was going to be about would have seemed. A couple of stoners from San Dimas go back in time to pass their history exam,
Sure.
But it turned out to be a really fun movie.
Well, and on that same token, I know that you appeared on Celebrity Fit Club on VH1, and some of the people who watch that show may have discovered your music through that as well. Did you find that to be the case?
Well, TV has always worked for us. In that particular instance, what was really different, first off, man, it was really tough to decide to do the show because I knew they were going to spin me around in my underwear on a human rotisserie for the world to see. Okay? But, here's the thing, first and foremost, we have a lot of our fans that are challenged health-wise, and I wanted to be a good example. Also, at that time in my life, I really think I needed it. I kind of let myself go. I'd been doing a radio show for a couple of years for Lifetime, and I just basically let my good habits go away, and I gained a lot of weight. And these guys came along and they said, "Okay, here's the upside of it. We're going to pay you to work out, have your own trainer, your own psychiatrist, and your own drill instructor in a competitive environment." I was like, all right, let's go. And I went from 22% body fat to 9% body fat in 6 weeks. I shredded. I actually really tried really hard. And
sure. And
it's actually something I'm actually pretty proud of. I mean, the format of the show is goofy, of course, but, the end result, what I proved to myself is that I could spend 10 years letting myself go and not caring as much as I should have. And then it only took me six weeks of intense effort to get it all back. And I hope that's what the people that watched that show really got from it. I was really proud of the results.
Yeah, definitely cool for sure. And it's great that you guys are still out there. And of course, the new album, Peace Out. And I also read you guys tour kind of in a tribute to your dad. Do you think maybe your kids will follow in your footsteps someday? Maybe like a fourth generation of the Nelsons?
Oh my gosh, we should only be so lucky. That'd be really cool. The show that you're referring to, it's called Ricky Nelson Remembered, and we call it a celebration, not a tribute, because tributes to me kind of denote someone going out on stage. Like we're not in Ricky Nelson suits. We're not trying to be Elvis or anything like that. We're basically. I mean, if you think about the body of work that our father had, I mean, Hello, Mary Lou, Traveling Man, Poor Little Fool, Lonesome Town, I Got a Feeling, Believe What You Say, Teenage Idol, Garden Party, it just goes on and on and on. I mean, what an amazing body of work. And so what we did was we decided to put together a very particular special evening that uses video, and we actually get to play his tunes. But in the process of doing it, what was amazing is as a rock guitar player, my chops took a quantum shift upwards when I started playing all those James Burton solos. I mean, the guy was so ahead of his time. He was really the first guitar hero. And, I also found with that stuff, when you clean up your tone as a guitar player, you can't really hide your mistakes. I mean, you have to be pretty darn precise. And,
Right.
and it really positively affected my rock playing. So when you listen to Nelson's latest record, when you listen to Peace Out, all the guitar work that I did on that record, the soloing and stuff, is really a direct result from going back to my roots and rock and roll's roots and doing that great rockabilly stuff and getting a lot more dexterous in my playing. I really actually love the fact that we can wear several different hats during the year. We get to go out and do Nelson shows. We get to do shows with our other band, Scrap Metal. We get to go out with Ricky Nelson. Remember, it keeps things fresh. And here we are all these years later, out on tour, releasing records and doing what we've always wanted to do, which is, make the music that we love to make, hopefully make people happy in the process, get to support our families. We got kids now, and in answer of your question, man, nothing would make me happier than if our kids decided to start singing one day, and maybe, the Nelson family, we're really lucky. We're in the Guinness Book as the only family in history with 3 generations of number 1 hit makers. Nothing would make me happier than being able to make it a 4th generation one day.
Yeah, definitely would be awesome for sure. And again, Gunnar, I want to thank you for being on with me. The new album, Peace Out, I'm looking forward to that. And, of course, that's pretty fresh. I don't know if you guys are working on anything else or maybe upcoming projects after this.
Well, actually, what we're doing is we're putting all of our energy and attention into Peace Out, touring on it, and promoting it, and we're going to do that through the end of the year. And then at the end of the year, we're actually going to make a conscious shift to a brand new trip that is going to be, I want you to imagine if the Everly Brothers were making music today, what they'd be doing. And Matt and I, that's what we're going to be focusing on. So this is the last Nelson Arena Rock record that will ever be made, hence the title, Peace Out. And, if you were to pick up 2 Nelson records just to kind of get a glimpse of what we were all about, I highly recommend picking up the first one and definitely picking up this last one.
Beautiful. Again, thanks a lot for being on with me today, Gunnar.
Hey, thanks for your time, man. I appreciate the support.
All right. Have a good one.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Take care.